Hello and welcome to the 3 Championship Drive podcast hosted by me, your favorite host, Lance Caporossi. Say it with me. Anyways, let's get into this. There was a tweet earlier today, and it comes from a Twitter account named Poly Market Hoops. I'm assuming they probably do something with gambling. Anyways, they quoted the great Chris B. Haynes, and the quote wasn't correct. So this is what they tweeted out. Polymarket Hoops, they tweeted out, Jalen Duren is fed up, those were in quotes, with the Pistons, and this next part's in quotes, really wants out of Detroit. Now just let that sit there for a minute with you. Jalen Duren is fed up with the Pistons and really wants out of Detroit. This feels like something we have been hearing all offseason. Ever since the reports came out that the Detroit Pistons and Jalen Duren are far away when it comes to negotiations, we've just been hearing reports that Jalen Duren's looking for a team to sign and trade. He doesn't want to be in Detroit. He might just take the qualifying offer, then dip on out. Okay, fine. That's fine. But Chris B. Haynes said, and this is the quote that Polymarket Hoops is quoting, and Chris B. Haynes said, if Jalen Duren accepts the qualifying offer, then he really wants out and believes in himself. So it's a whole lot of nothing. There is something there because he's reporting on the news. He's telling us how Jalen Duren is feeling. And I'm super confident in myself. I believe I can be one of the highest paid players in the league. That's who I am. That's my belief. And if Detroit is going to pretty much force their hand and force my hand, I'm just going to sign the qualifying offer, then I'm out. Okay, that's real news. That's what we've been waiting for. That's something that we can discuss, something that we can let marinate, and hopefully more news comes out about Jalen Duren, and hopefully he signs an offer with the Detroit Pistons, because that seems to be the other reports out there, is that Jalen Duren is the number one priority. Detroit believes in him. They want him back. They don't want to break up the core. I feel like Chris B. Haynes is reporting on that information right there that I just said, that he is their number one priority and he wants to make it work. And they want to make it work. I guess my biggest thing is, like, I first saw this tweet and I was like, dang. I read the words fed up, really wants out. And I'm not going to lie. Like, I read this earlier in the day and there was a part of me that was like, dude, I have a bad taste in my mouth from Jalen Duren. This dude is just really, I get it, he's young. This was my thoughts. I was like, I get that he's young. He's a cornerstone player. You know, this is the team believes in him. They believe that he's a big piece. They're just trying to get things done. And it just seems like he's really difficult to work with. That's where my mind went. But now that I know that the quote is just chopped up for clickbait reasons, that bad taste really isn't in my mouth anymore for Jalen Duren. I want the best for him, whether that's in Detroit or somewhere else. It doesn't matter. Like, I just want the best for Jalen Duren. I want this part of the offseason to be over. I just want him to say, I'm staying in Detroit or I'm leaving Detroit. That's it. And then I want to move on. I just feel like this part of the offseason is just handcuffing the Detroit Pistons. And I do like their roster. We're going to talk about it here in a minute. But, like, man, they got to get something done so they can move on. Like, time is a clicking. Like, it is just going to keep on counting down. So, please, let's get something done with Jalen Duren. And, yeah. So, there was this guy. His name is Jeff Singer. I have no idea if this is, like, a parody account, a journalist, or what. But he said, I'm not a GM for many reasons, mostly because I'm an idiot, but this seems like a type of situation. He's talking about the Jalen Duren news, quote unquote. And he said, this is the type of situation that the Jazz should jump all over. Trade Bryce, flip Filipowski, and flip and a couple first rounders in a sign and trade. So trade Bryce Sensabaugh, and I'm assuming Kyle Filipowski. Sign him to the same contract you offered Kessler. I just feel like this Jazz team's a cent away from being a legit contender. I don't know if Jalen Duren makes the Jazz a legit contender or not. I don't even know if I really like the trade. But I mean, I don't know what you get for Jalen Duren in a trade. And I guess if I'm getting Bryce Sensabaugh and Kyle Filipowski and a couple first, if that is the case, it's not a terrible trade. It's probably not a trade that I'm pulling the trigger on. I don't feel like Danny Ainge would give up that much for Jalen Duren anyway. So it's like a pipe dream. But it's good work. It's not a bad trade necessarily. And that's the only, like, I thought my feed would just be blowing up with Jalen Duren trade scenarios, and I really didn't get that. This is the one I got, and I'll say now, I don't want to make a trade with the Utah Jazz because I just don't want to trade with Danny Ainge. I feel like you just kind of feel like used a little bit and a little dirty when you make a trade with Danny Ainge. At least that's how I would feel. Like, I felt like, man, I just gave him everything you want. I barely got anything out of this. Like, he just kind of comes off as a selfish lover, and yeah, I just feel like it'd be his needs met before mine. So I would not want to trade with Danny Ainge at all. I'm completely out on it. Now let's get to the meat and potatoes of this podcast, because I don't want to talk too much about Jalen Duren. So we're going to talk about the Detroit Pistons projected 2026-2027 starting lineup and depth chart. So the full roster, we're going to talk about it. The starting lineup is Cade Cunningham, Duncan Robinson, Ausar Thompson, John Collins, and Jalen Duren. That's the starting five. I really like that starting five. I do have a couple of concerns, but I feel like with Cade being an all-NBA player, with Cade having the usage that he has, you got enough shooting in the starting lineup. You got enough spacing with the shooting and the vertical spacing with Jalen Duren and Ausar Thompson. You got a legit playmaker. You are missing a secondary playmaker unless they think Ausar Thompson can play that role with this starting lineup, which maybe he can. I don't know. We'll talk about that in a second as well. But I mean, I don't hate the starting five. I kind of like John Collins in this lineup more than I like Tobias Harris, even though Tobias Harris, one of those dudes, you got a short shot clock. You can just give him the ball and he can go get you a bucket in a pinch. We don't know if John Collins has not been that type of player, but in terms of catching and shooting, just spacing the floor, he gives us more in that department than we were getting with Tobias Harris, according to other basketball minds that break this down game, that break this game down more than I do. I just completely copy what they say. So then the depth chart goes, and I don't agree with the point guard depth chart. It's Ibuka, Okori, Dennis Jenkins behind Cade Cunningham. I do think it will be Dennis Jenkins behind Cunningham. I think it's his job to lose. Ibuka, in my opinion, has had a good summer league. It just hasn't been enough for me to say, yeah, he's definitely behind Cade Cunningham on the depth chart. Then we have Isaiah Joe and Kevin Huerter behind Duncan Robinson. We have Javonte Green behind Ausar Thompson. Then we have Ron Holland II, Taurean Prince, and then Paul Reed and Tulu Smith behind Jalen Duren. It's not a bad, like, that's a Detroit 12. That right there, that just screams Detroit Pistons. That's the makeup of like a 50-win team right there. And that's where I'm at now. Like, how many wins do I think this team will have? I would say, like, to be conservative and just kind of protect myself just a little bit, I would say give me 48 wins. I think this team is like a 46 to 48 win team. That's on the conservative side. That's just me saying, like, hey, look, I don't want to be taken through the grinder with a quote or what. I'm just telling you, I think we're looking at 46 to 48 wins with this team. I think they're good enough for 46 to 48 wins. Now, if you were to say, like, what I think the realistic record is for this team, how many wins this team, because I think with Cade, you're probably, with just Cade yourself, you're probably a top 10 offense within which the way he controls everything. And then with Ausar Thompson, your team, with him leading the defense, you probably could be a top 10 defense too in the league. Like, you're looking at a pretty balanced team with these two guys on the roster. But realistic, 50 to 53. I think Vegas has them at 50 over under. And that's where I would go. I would actually bet the over on 50. I really do think there's an opportunity for the Pistons to get 51, 52, 53 wins. I think that is realistic. Reason is Cade plays at an all-NBA level already. He's going to continue that. Ausar continues to develop. Maybe he does become a secondary playmaker and a corner jump shooter for the Pistons. Collins shoots around 38-40% like he has been the last couple seasons. And then the bench shooting of Isaiah Joe, Kevin Huerter, Dennis Jenkins, Ibuka, Taurean Prince, Paul Reed to a degree, maybe they all start clicking on the bench unit too. Like the shots just begin to fall. So we have offense in the starting and on the bench unit. But I think 50 to 53 wins, I think that's completely fair and completely doable for this Detroit Pistons team. Now, if I'm just like, dude, best case scenario, this team, everything goes right. Maybe they make a trade at the deadline to really push them over the top. I'm thinking best case scenario for this team, the starting 5 and the 7 that I've already mentioned for the 2026-2027 projected roster, I think 55 wins is the absolute everything works. We don't get hit with a ton of injuries this year. Everything just clicks, 55 wins. And I think that's a good year. I think 55 is fair. I'm not going to say 60 wins again because you're a damn good team. But also a lot of things have to fall in place too. Like you need a Jason Tatum to be out. You need some of the top tier teams to get hit with injuries so you can get a few more wins out of there that are a little bit easier than they would normally be. But I think in order for the Pistons to get 55 or more wins, I think a few things will happen. Duren takes another leap on offense where he becomes like a legit number 2 alongside Cade. Cade enters the MVP conversations, which he kind of did last year. But I think if you can give the NBA another 55-plus win season, you really got to be talked about as one of the most valuable players in the league. Then I would have to say, if the best case is 55 wins, this would also have to happen. It's either Ron Holland or Corey breaks out. Either Ron Holland figures out the jump shot and he just becomes like the two-way player we all believe he can be, or a Corey plays better than being the 17th pick. I think one of those two things would have to happen, and that would really push this Pistons team into that territory of being a 55-win team. I just think those questions have to be answered. I definitely think this team is a playoff team regardless. Even if they make no more moves this offseason, even if they make no moves during the regular season, I think this current 12 that is projected for 2026 and 2027 is a playoff team. I really just like the overall makeup of the team. I know it's not a lot of sexy names, but I do, outside of more shot creation and playmaking, we did upgrade the shooting. We did upgrade the spacing. I really love what Trajan Langdon. I shouldn't say I really love what he's done, but I have enjoyed this offseason, even though my expectations were we're going all in. I guess my thing too, when you see this starting lineup, and look, I still understand that there are fans like it's just not enough. Like the starting 5, we're still dependent on Cade. There's a lot of pressure and a lot of responsibility falls on him to make this team go. I get that. But here's my thing. I feel like the Pistons didn't make a big move, an all-in move this offseason, because there's a part of Trajan Lane that's like, let's just give Ausar Thompson a few more reps. Let's give Ron Holland a few more reps. Let's give Ibuka a few reps. Let's give Dennis Jenkins a few reps. Let's give these guys reps during the regular season. Let's see if they can take their games to another level before we go all in. And if they can't, then we'll make that move because we got more tradable contracts now. We can push. We have a few young assets. We have a few first-round picks. We can make a move during the regular season if these young guys don't pan out the way that I think they're going to do. But with this lineup, I do think we're going to see a lot of Ausar ball handling. I think we're going to see Ausar Thompson pushing the ball in transition, making plays for others. I really do feel like the Pistons' lack of urgency in finding a secondary playmaker, part of that decision in not pursuing one of those players, whether it was Tyler Hero, DeRozan, Zach LaVine, Ayo Dosunmu, whatever. I really feel like the lack of urgency to make a play on one of those names was because of Ausar Thompson. I think the coaching staff and I think Trajan Langdon, they see him and they see flashes of him being kind of like a Ben Simmons light. And look, Ben Simmons was a hell of a player too before he got the mental blockage of shooting. If Ausar Thompson becomes some version of Ben Simmons, like without the headaches and the back problems, then that's pretty good. Ben Simmons was a legit defensive player of the year and all defensive team member and all NBA team member. Like that's a good ceiling for Ausar Thompson. But are fans ready for that? Are fans ready to watch a season? And it will be frustrating if Ausar Thompson does get a lot of on-ball reps. I'm here for it. I'm excited for it because I think that's what's going to happen. I think they're really going to try to push for him to grow as a player in transition, but also a player in the half court where I really think he needs to figure out his ball handling and his playmaking. But that's it. Like, are you excited about Ausar Thompson going in? Are you excited about Ausar Thompson being that secondary playmaker for the Detroit Pistons? Because in this lineup, when you look at it, Cade Cunningham, Duncan Robinson, Ausar, John Collins, Jalen Duren, I understand we have substitutions, but there is not enough playmaking, shot creation in this starting lineup. And since I started doing this podcast again, I still would like to see, that's probably why I'm pushing for Dennis Jenkins to be starting in the backcourt with Cade, because on this team, he gives you the best blend of on and off ball ability to play alongside Cade Cunningham. So I'm bullish on Dennis Jenkins starting. I like Duncan Robinson coming off the bench. But if you're going to keep this five, I do think Ausar Thompson, you are going to see him heavily involved in the offense. And that sounds crazy to say, but you got to figure something out with him. I do think he'll be better if he gets a jump shot where he can at least keep defenses honest. I don't care if you're shooting 32%. Defenses have to pay attention to you. That's fine. But that's what I think we're going to see this year. And I don't know if people are ready for it. I don't know if people are ready because my big fear is that we all turn on Ausar Thompson because we're seeing him in these situations where it's like, do we need to see him in these situations? I mean, I just want to see him in the transition. I just want to see him get a rebound and push the ball down the floor and create something. But I think with Ausar, I think there's a good chance he can actually take pressure off of Cade Cunningham, because there are definitely stretches throughout the game where it just feels like nobody else on this team has an ounce of basketball IQ when it comes to the offensive side, and they're all just so dependent on Cade. So if you can get Ausar playing in a more playmaking role and you can take some of that pressure off of Cade, that's just a win. And I don't know, I just want to take advantage of Asar's athleticism. And I feel like putting the ball in his hands and getting him in some situations where he gets to attack downhill, that's good for him. I think during the regular season, you can do that because, look, there's going to be off nights from teams. Not every team is going to game plan like they're in a playoff game for the Detroit Pistons. 82 regular season games, as long as it doesn't affect the win-loss column too much, I think continuing to experiment with Ausar in this playmaking role, the secondary playmaking role, is a good thing. And I just got to reiterate, I do think we're going to see it with this starting lineup. I just don't, when you look at the 12 men on this team, Cade, Dennis Jenkins, and hopefully Okori are the guys that can create for themselves and for others, and that's about it on this team. Maybe Jalen Duren takes a leap as a playmaker out of the short role. Maybe. I just think it's going to be Ausar Thompson, and I just don't know if we're all ready for it or not. A couple more things I wanted to talk about. The Pistons going all in. Is it better to go all in now or wait to go all in during the season? So I'm going to make 3 arguments for going all in now, and then I'm going to make 3 arguments for waiting. So my arguments for going all in now is Cade is already good enough. Cade he's an all-NBA team member. You could argue he's a top 8, top 10 player in the NBA, maybe even top 6. He's ready. He's ready to really compete and put his name out there for the casual basketball fans that watch the NBA. I know he's getting there. He had a great season, but I think he's already good enough to where you can go all in right now because you believe in Cade and you're like, dude, we got a damn good player at point guard. Let's give him the rest of the pieces so we can actually go out and compete. My second point is the roster's biggest weakness is obvious. It's shot creation. It's playmaking. It's a secondary ball handler. It's obvious. You can go all in and get one of those guys and put them in the backcourt. We saw what Minnesota did with LaMelo Ball. They went out and got Anthony Edwards' help, and they brought in LaMelo Ball. When a lot of people out there feel like LaMelo is taking that turn to become a really good guard in the NBA, they took a chance. I think with the weakness as obvious as it is, nobody would have complained about them going all in on a secondary playmaker alongside Cade Cunningham. We all want to see Cade succeed in Detroit. And all of us fans know if you get a secondary playmaker, a real running mate for Cade in the backcourt or at the 3, this team can go places. My third argument for going all in is last season, when the Pistons went on that winning streak, they looked like a pretty damn good basketball team. And we saw them through the regular season, 60 wins, second round playoff appearance, lost in 7. I was a big proponent of the East is weak. It's wide open. You're a damn good team. Why are you not making a push for an all-in move so you can go real deep into the playoffs? They got burned for it. They got burned for waiting. We had a good team. The East was open. Nobody projected the Knicks to win the whole thing. But because of injuries, because of bad play, just because of other things that happened, the East was wide open. And Trajan had an opportunity to say, you know what? I think I've seen enough in some of these young guys. I don't know if there's any more there. Let me flip them before the league catches on. And let me go get Cade a legit number 2, and let's go win a championship. Now, I don't know if they would have won a championship just by making an all-in move like that, but you can argue that the time was right, and that waiting potentially cost the Pistons a deep playoff run. And you might be saying, well, that's another year wasted for Cade. That could be it. Now, let's make an argument for why we should go all in. So the case for waiting, you need to see what happens with Ron Holland. That's a big thing for me. You need more information on some of these players. If you believe Ron Holland can be a two-way player, you probably don't trade him. You probably give him most of next regular season the opportunity to say this is a make it or bust year. Either you make it to what our expectations are for you, or we're going to find you a new home. That's what it is. You need information on what Okori becomes during the regular season. Maybe he shows out in the first couple of games where you're like, okay, he was the 17th pick. He struggled a little bit during Summer League, but this guy has figured it out and things are clicking. We can rely on this guy now. We know he's only 19. He's still a teenager, but he has shown us enough where we say, you know what? We can go win some games with Okori. Let's do this. I think you need to see whether Ausar can handle more creation duties on the offensive end. Because if you're telling me Ausar Thompson hasn't improved any on offense, but he's still giving you the elite defense, there might need to be a conversation of flipping him. Because you're saying, like, you're only giving me one side of the ball. You win games by scoring more than the opponent. I understand some stops can happen. But you can be a great defender, but if we're not winning games, who the hell cares? And if you're not bringing anything on the offensive end, maybe we might need to unload you. My last point, I said I only had 3, but I do have a 4th. And this is the argument for waiting still. trade prices will probably drop at the deadline. We had New Orleans saying 4 first-round picks for Trey. Then they're saying 3. Now they're saying he's off the table. Let's just say New Orleans, for example, let's just say they start out pretty bad. They look like they're going to be a lottery team. And they're saying, hey, this current, I doubt Joe Dumars and Troy Weaver actually have this conversation because they have just been making a mess of things in New Orleans. But maybe they say, look, it's not working. We do need to blow this thing up. Let's just try to get as much as we can. And that would be a classic Joe Dumars, Troy Weaver move where they just waited too long. They didn't get the exact value they should get for their young piece. But my point is, prices drop during the regular season. What people are asking for today may not be what they're asking for tomorrow. So before I close, I just want to say, I think this season comes down to one question. Can Ausar Thompson become enough of a secondary creator to keep Detroit from making a major trade? Because if the answer is no, Trajan Langdon may have no choice but to push his chips in the middle of the table and go all in before we waste Cade's prime. Because now we're coming up to Cade's prime. Like I've always said since I've done this podcast, we're on Cade's clock. The Pistons have got to make a team be a winner, or you lose the best player that has been drafted to Detroit since Grant Hill. The clock is ticking, man. It really is. Hopefully Langdon and hopefully the Pistons make a move, whether it's this offseason or whether it's during the regular season, that shows Cade, that puts all the trust in the world for Cade to say, you know what, I'm not leaving Detroit because I trust these guys. They're willing to go the distance. They're willing to make the necessary tough moves to put me in a position to win a championship. That's all I want. Thank you for listening to the 3 Championship Drive podcast. Do me a favor, hit subscribe or hit the follow button, leave a review, rate us, but more importantly, tell a Pistons fan